All rise. The First District Court of the State of West Virginia is now in session. The Honorable Judge Stone is presiding. Please be seated.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm calling the case of the State of West Virginia versus John Doe. Are both sides ready?
Your Honor, the prosecution announces as ready for the trial. Also, the defense announces as ready for the trial.
Very good. Will the bailiff please swear in the jury?
Will the jury please stand and raise your right hand? Do each of you swear that you will fairly try the case before this court and that you will return a true verdict according to the evidence and the instruction of the court, so help you God? Please say, I do. You may now be seated.
I'm going to ask each side, the prosecution and the defense, to give the jury their opening statements. Each attorney will have the opportunity to tell the jury what evidence they intend to present during the trial. The burden of proof is on the state, so the prosecutor shall go first, followed by the defense counsel. I will also let you know that the depositions have been taken in this case, and I will allow the attorneys and witnesses to refer to the transcripts while giving their testimony. I'm now going to ask each side, the prosecution and the defense, to give the jury their opening statements. Each attorney will have the opportunity to tell the jury what evidence they intend to present during the trial. The burden of proof is on the state, so the prosecutor will go first, followed by the defense counsel. I will also let you know that depositions have been taken in this case, and I will allow the attorneys and witnesses to refer to their transcripts while giving their testimony. The prosecution may proceed.
May it please the court. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defendant, John Doe, has been charged with the crime of driving or taking a car belonging to someone else without the permission of the owner. The evidence will show that a 2016 Ford Mustang was stolen the night of November 11th. The owner reported the theft. The next day, the defendant was arrested for driving the stolen car. The defendant's fingerprints were on the keys used to steal the car. The evidence I will present to you will prove that the defendant is guilty as charged.
The defense may proceed.
Your Honor, may it please the court, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, under the law protected by the U.S. Constitution and the state of West Virginia, my client is presumed innocent until proven guilty. During this trial, you will hear no direct evidence presented which proves my client's guilt. You will come to know the truth, that John Doe was simply riding in a Ford Mustang, which car was stolen by someone else. After learning that the car was stolen, my client was trying to do the right thing by returning the car to its owner. Therefore, my client is not guilty of the charge.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, each side will now be given the opportunity to call witnesses and introduce exhibits to prove their side of the case. Any witness I allow to testify and any exhibit I allow to be admitted may be considered by you, the jury. You may not consider any witnesses or exhibits that I do not allow to be introduced into evidence. The prosecution may now call its first witness.
The people called Jim Smith, the owner of the car.
Mr. Smith, please raise your right hand. You promise that the testimony you shall give in the case before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please be seated.
Please state your first and your last name.
Jim Smith.
And where do you work, Mr. Smith?
At my car lot,
What is the address of your business for Smith Car Sales?
100 Main Street, Webster, West Virginia.
Were you working there on November 11th?
Yes, I was.
And was one of the cars that you had for sale on your lot a red 2016 Ford Mustang with license plate number ABC 246?
Yes.
Did you see the car on the lot during the day of November 11th?
Yes, the car was there when we closed that night.
And did you see the car again on November 12th?
No, it was missing when I got to work that morning.
And where were the keys to the Mustang when you left at the end of the day on November 11th?
They were locked in a steel cabinet we keep in the office.
Where were the keys when you came back to the office on November 11th?
They were still locked in the steel cabinet in the sales office.
Did you call the police and report the car as stolen?
Yes, I called the police and reported the car as stolen.
And did you give anyone, including the defendant, permission to take or drive the Mustang on November 11th?
No, I did not.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Does the defense have any questions?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
The witness is excused. Prosecution may call its next witness.
The people call Officer Malone the arresting officer.
Officer Malone, please raise your right hand. Do you promise that the testimony you shall give in the case before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated.
Please state your first name and your last name.
Pam Malone.
Officer, where do you work?
I'm a patrol officer working for the West Virginia Highway Patrol for the last 10 years.
And were you on duty on November 12th?
Yes, I was patrolling the highway north of Webster.
Did you observe a red 2016 Ford Mustang that afternoon?
Yes, I did.
And what was the license plate number on that car?
It was ABC 246.
Where did you first see the car?
I first observed it proceeding south towards Webster near exit number 4.
And what caused you to notice the car?
It fit the description of a car which was on our list of stolen vehicles.
Did you pull over the red Mustang?
Yes, I turned on my lights and siren and stopped the car on the shoulder of the highway.
At what location did you stop the car?
I stopped the car approximately 1/2 mile north of exit number 4 on the highway.
And what did you do after the car was stopped?
I positively identified the license plate and ordered the driver to step out of the car. I then informed the driver that he was under arrest.
Do you see the driver in court today?
Yes, that man.
Let the record reflect that the witness has identified the person she arrested as the same person sitting at the defense table. After you arrested the defendant, did you search the car?
Yes.
And what did you find in the car?
I found a set of keys in the ignition of the car.
Are these the keys you found in the car?
Yes, those are the keys.
Your Honor, I would like to have these keys marked as People's Exhibit Number 1 and ask that they be admitted into evidence.
Does the defense have any objections?
No, Your Honor.
The keys will be admitted as People's Exhibit Number 1.
Officer, was there anything you observed about the keys that was unusual?
Yes. Based on my experience as a highway patrol officer, they appeared to me to be shaved master keys.
Can you please explain to the jury what you mean by shaved master keys?
Yes. Shaved master keys are keys that have been filed down so that they will start all models of a particular type of car. They are used as tools to steal cars.
I have no further questions.
Does the defense have any questions of this witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Officer, when you pulled the car over, you ordered my client to turn off the ignition, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
So you saw the defendant touch the keys.
Yes.
Do you know how far Smith's Car Sales is from highway exit number 4?
Yes, it's about a mile south from there.
Thank you, officer. I have no further questions.
This witness will be excused. Any further witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The people call an expert witness and fingerprint examiner, Mr. George Wade.
Mr. Wade, please raise your right hand. Do you promise that the testimony you shall give in the case before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated.
Please state your first name and your last name.
George Wade.
And Mr. Wade, where do you work?
I'm employed by the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department. I've been a trained and qualified fingerprint examiner for the last 10 years.
Mr. Wade, have you seen these keys before?
Yes, I was asked to check them for fingerprints at my lab.
And did you find any fingerprints on the keys as a result of your examination and testing?
Yes, there were several clear print impressions on them.
Were you able to identify the defendant's fingerprints on the keys?
Yes, the prints I found on 2 of the keys were identical to the fingerprints taken from the defendant.
Thank you. I have no further questions and no other witnesses, Your Honor.
Does the defense have any questions of this witness?
Yes, Your Honor, we do. Mr. Wade, isn't it true that you also found fingerprints on the keys which did not belong to the defendant?
Correct.
To whom did the other fingerprints belong?
I don't know.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have no further questions.
This witness is excused.
Your Honor, the people rest their case against the defendant.
Is the defense ready to proceed with its case?
Yes, Your Honor. I call the defendant.
Jurors, in our trial today and under our law and the presumption of innocence, the defendant does not have to testify, but has nevertheless decided to do so. The prosecution cannot force the defendant to testify, but should the defendant choose to testify, the prosecution is allowed to fully question the defendant.
Please come to the witness stand. Please raise your right hand. Do you promise that the testimony you shall give in the case before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated.
Please state your first name and last name.
John Doe.
Mr. Doe, where were you on the afternoon of February 12th?
I was at the Quick Stop store on South Main Street in Webster.
Did you see a 2016 Ford Mustang at that location?
Yes. Yeah, I saw a guy pull into the parking lot driving that car.
And did you talk to that driver?
Yes. I asked him how fast the car was.
And what did he tell you?
Oh, it was fast. He said I could get in the car, and he said he would show me how fast it was.
So then what did you do?
I got in the car with him, and we started up the highway going north. He was driving really fast.
And do you know the name of this driver?
Yeah. Yeah, he told me his name was Rick.
And do you know what his last name is?
No, I don't. I don't know. He never told me.
Have you ever met Rick before?
No.
Did he tell you where he got the car?
Yes. He said he'd stolen the car.
And when did he tell you that?
It was when we were driving down the highway.
How far did you ride with this Rick?
It's about 15 miles north to Briarwood. He didn't stop till we got before then.
And what happened when you reached Briarwood?
Well, he said, we stopped, and he said he was getting out of the car, and he said I could have it.
So, is that when you took the car?
Well, I started to drive back south to Webster so I could return the car.
How did you know where you were going to return this car?
Well, Rick told me that he took the car from a car lot in Webster.
And where were you when the officer pulled you over and arrested you?
I was headed south on the highway. It was just before the exit to downtown Webster.
So, do these keys belong to you?
No.
Okay, have you ever seen them before?
Yes. No, I saw them when I was in that red Mustang.
Did you touch the keys?
I did. Yes. When I turned the car off when the officer pulled me over.
Thank you, Mr. Doe. I have no further questions. And Your Honor, I have no further witnesses.
Does the state have any questions of Mr. Doe?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Doe, what did this Rick look like?
I don't remember exactly. He had dark hair. He was wearing a light t-shirt and jeans, I think.
So you just got into this car with someone that you didn't know and had never even seen before?
Yes. I mean, I'd never been in that type of Mustang before. I think it was a red Mustang. It was Mustang GT, I think.
Did it occur to you at any time that maybe you should call the police?
Well, sure. Yeah, but there wasn't a phone. We didn't stop before we got up to Brewster, and I didn't have my cell phone with me, So, and then once I started back, I just kept driving.
You wanted to drive the Mustang because it's a fast car, didn't you?
I guess so.
And you knew the car was stolen at the time that you started to drive it, didn't you?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Doe. I have no further questions.
The witness is excused. Does the defense have any further action before this court?
No, Your Honor, we have no further witnesses and the defense rests.
Counsel for the parties, are you ready with your final arguments?
The prosecution is ready, Your Honor.
The defense is ready, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, each side has this one last chance to argue their position to you on the evidence and to attempt to convince you to rule in favor of their side of the case. Prosecution may begin.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the judge has told you that the state and the prosecution must prove 3 things. There is absolutely no question about the first 2 things we must prove. First, the defendant was arrested driving a car belonging to the owner of Smith Car Sales. Second, the owner, Jim Smith, testified that no one, including the defendant, had permission to drive or take the Mustang. Therefore, all the state must prove is that the defendant drove the car and intended to keep it away from the owner for at least a little while. The defendant admitted to wanting to drive the Mustang because it was fast. The defendant also knew that the car was stolen and says that even he thought about calling the police before driving it. But the defendant, instead of returning the car, did not try and find a phone and did not try and stop anywhere between Briarwood and Webster to call the police. This is evidence which clearly shows that the defendant clearly intended to keep the car for at least a little while. According to the instructions the judge gave you, that is all the state must prove to find the defendant guilty of the crime. Based on the evidence, you must find the defendant guilty.
Defense counsel may continue.
Thank you. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, John Doe, the defendant, was an unlucky guy and got into a car with a man, a stranger, who had stolen a car. He got into the car because it was a fast-looking Mustang, and he was thrilled by what that type of car would do. My client's fingerprints were found on the keys because he had to touch them when the officer pulled him over in the car. But remember, the prosecutor's own expert told you that other fingerprints were found on those keys that could not be identified and did not belong to my client. I suggest to you those fingerprints belong to the real thief, Rick. My client, John Doe, is an honest person, and he was only trying to return the car to its owner. If my client had intended to keep the car, even for a little while, why would he drive it back to Webster? Remember that under the law, my client is presumed to be innocent. The prosecutor must prove every part of their case beyond a reasonable doubt. That means that you must be very sure of the facts. One of the things the prosecutor must prove is that my client intended to keep the car from the car's owner. My client is the only person who knows what he intended, and he testified under oath that he was not trying to keep the car from the owner, but was trying to return it to the owner. The prosecutor did not present any direct evidence to show you that my client intended to keep the car from the owner. That means there is reasonable doubt in this case, and therefore you must find my client, John Doe, not guilty.
Jurors, the next step in this trial is to allow you, the jurors, to deliberate and decide whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty. Remember, to find the defendant not guilty is not the same thing as finding the defendant innocent. If all the jurors can make a unanimous decision, that will be your jury verdict. You've heard several witnesses testify, including the defendant, John Doe. It is up to each of you to decide if you believe a witness was telling the truth or not. You should consider how the witness behaved on the stand and use your own common sense in deciding whether a witness was telling the truth. Also remember that it is the prosecutor's duty to prove the defendant is guilty. the defense does not have to prove the defendant is innocent. If the prosecutor did not prove her case, then the defendant is not guilty. Remember further that the jury can only say the defendant is guilty if the prosecutor proved all three elements of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. As I told you before, beyond a reasonable doubt means you must be very sure. That means you would still be sure tomorrow, or next week, or next year. It does not mean that there might be some doubt that you can conjure up in your imagination. You will now be given a copy of the jury instructions to use in your deliberations. You should pick a foreperson to lead the jury discussions, and you should see if you can reach a verdict. The foreperson will fill out the verdict form and return it to the bailiff.